Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today's Thursday, that means it's Stephen Platt Day. So we're looking at the next issue of Prophet that he worked on. Last week's review was issue number 8. This is not issue number 9. It's advertised last issue that Prophet is to be rebooted with a new number 1. So this is it here. So this is Prophet number 1 from August 1995. So first thing I want to do is take a quick look at the cover. First of all, it's a double gatefold cover. Kind of unfortunately practically doesn't work so well with these I think they were called Chromium by Valiant, right? And this is a very similar process where they're like embossed on the other side, if you can see that. I don't hate it. It's kind of cool. I like the effect. It gives certain colors kind of a magnetic metallic effect, a little bit of a blur there in the coloring. I don't know. I don't hate it. I just don't like the fact that this here is not very practical. And is way stiffer than any kind of just regular paper or cardboard cover, to where when you do this, it just if you let it go, it pops up, as you can see. So real quick, I'll try to hold it as best I can and talk about this cover, which I think is awesome. Typical Stephen Platt here, not inking himself anymore. Basically being inked by Marlo Alquiza, I think the name is, from now on, at least for a while. And I think at this point he's really settled in and is inking pretty darn tightly and closely to the Stephen Platt style that's laid down in the pencils. So I do think we're getting a slightly cleaner, maybe more deadline friendly Stephen Platt, but definitely still pouring on the detail. I just think he's kind of gained a little bit in clarity at this point in the game and where his art is going. And the great cover to remind us of the kind of the different eras where Prophet, he's this warrior out of time, right, who gets brought out in times of great violence, it seems, was established, right, and he's fought over many periods in history. He's like a Japanese, I guess, not a shogun, but I mean, it basically looks like Lone Wolf and Cub, right? Here he's like a Roman soldier, maybe a Spartan, I'm not quite sure. I guess that would be Roman, right, with the crucifixions and stuff, and the Catholics and the Christians rather. And this is like, you know, spacefaring future Prophet. And I guess, you know, there's a Prophet series that came out. It's been a while now, but like it seemed like it had like this European flavor. I bought all the trades and it's pretty cool. I'll look at it at some point too. But I guess that idea was established here that, you know, he can pretty much be any kind of warrior or guy on a mission through time. So you can do a lot of different stories with Prophet. Now, I will say as well, let's move on from the cover and have a look inside. The credits are important, so I'll go to them right away because of the Chromium cover. I guess they said, oh man, yeah, we can't really put the credits there. So they ended up putting the credits at the end of the comic. So I don't want to give too much away, but we'll go right to the end. Kind of cover that up for now. So Prophet, this is what I liked seeing and what I understood when I went through the comic. Writer Chuck Dixon, you know, seasoned writer. They brought in a guy who's been writing comics for years, and this story just holds up and is a lot more interesting and answers already many questions about Prophet that I had before, because they brought in this guy to kind of clean up Prophet's storyline and lay it out and give us basically, you know, answers to some of those questions. Once again, penciler Stephen Platt, inker Marlo Alquiza, colorist Christian Lickner, color separations Extreme Color, letters associate editor Kurt Hathaway, and that's where we're going to stop. Prophet created by Ralph Liefeld, obviously. So let's go to page number 1. And again, what a great opening shot here. Very kind of Aliens inspired, it feels like to me, like in the aesthetic. But what you're really going to want to pay attention to in this comic is you're kind of getting the typical Stephen Platt proportions and anatomy and hatching on human figures, but all of the tech just all of a sudden kind of cleans up, and there's almost like a manga influence, and it's just very adeptly drawn, and the draftsmanship is very precise. So I do like this first page, brings us into the story. Boom. We get a vertical 2-page splash. And that's a good example of what I mean about how the tech all of a sudden is just a lot cleaner. Still very detailed, but just technically better. And also less muddied by the hatching and just kept clean. The intricacy is in the actual details of the elements and not the level of aesthetic hatching on top. So all this looks really cool. Again, still to me feels very Alien inspired as well. It's not just the manga feel, but these little screws everywhere is definitely manga. And then boom, we get another double page splash. So, you know, Stephen Platt really getting to draw really big. The one difference, again, Marlo Alquiza, I think at this point is really settled in as his inker and knows what he's doing. I just feel like his lines are just a little bit thicker than maybe what Stephen Platt would put down. But that might be due to the fact that, you know, some of those Stephen Platt lines were so thin, they wouldn't appear in print, right? This has been talked about because he was so detail oriented and using those fine microns for some lines that just wouldn't appear in the actual printed comic. So Alquiza's kind of, you know, striking a balance there with slightly thicker lines, you know, a little more Dan Panosian in the inks on top of Stephen Platt than maybe someone like Danny Meeke would do. And I think it works. I think the Stephen Platt is definitely coming through. I think he's being very, very, very loyal to the pencils. And there's some pencil pages at the end that we'll look at that will definitely prove that. So after those two double page splashes, I thought maybe the book would be all double page splashes, vertical. So I was kind of annoyed, but no, it comes back down to just regular old single page layouts here. And again, you know, let's talk anatomy. We're still getting Prophet Extreme, Rob Liefeldish face, you know, facial hair. The hair all of a sudden has become, again, more manga influenced and just spiky and out, his long hair, which is kind of odd, but, you know, I think it starts around this issue. And the big thighs, right? But when it comes, again, here comes another technological element. This kind of, you know, crab-legged tank or something, I guess is what I'd call it, you know. Like, we're really getting Conan of the future, like sci-fi Conan vibes is what I'm getting from this comic. The coloring is just so saturated and all over the place. There's no clear distinction between foreground and middle ground, which is, again, some of the problem with this type of coloring back in the 90s. But, you know, it's of a time and definitely fits the style, right? It kind of goes together. I'm wondering if, like, did he redraw that again? That's pretty crazy. I do feel like he did. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Wow, so to draw that, kind of odd that he would draw it both times kind of from the same angle. Maybe a different angle would have been a little more interesting, but whatever. This part here, too, is pretty interesting because, once again, just like the cover infers, we're getting shots of Prophet all through history, right? Different moments fighting the Nazis. This looks like the Dark Ages, I guess, you know, medieval armor and stuff. Once again, that Roman vibe that we got, and I would assume he's got a mohawk, so, you know, in Stephen Platt's eyes, maybe it's Native American or something. I'm not quite sure. Funny that he would still have the padding on his face there. But just so much detail in all of these panels, right? Again, if you're not trained to look at comic books drawn this way before looking at this, I think you'd be somewhat confused. Now here's a page where I feel like the coloring actually helps out a bit more to separate. You know, I don't know if the colors just learned something at this point, but to separate the foreground and the background, you know, more dark, you know, full saturated colors in the foreground here, and then just a very light color in the back to give us that definition and separation. Easier to read the figures, right? All of this feels like, you know, manga influence, all this line work here. I don't know what you call those lines, but energy lines, movement lines, they're all over the place. I mean, that's one thing with Stephen Platt, the proportions are weird, but the comic certainly moves and the characters certainly move in space. I think this is a nice coloring touch where finally, you know, someone's being a little more subdued and kind of going with this monochrome purpley color for all these characters in the background here. Again, all the different versions of Prophet from the past. Pretty much Cable here, right? Didn't spot that at first, but yeah, there he is. There's Prophet, the starry light up eye, short white hair. Definitely feel like he's channeling a bit of Cable there. But yeah, just, you know, beautiful 90s extreme art. Some of these shots, like when I look at this, like, man, the detail and the intricacy, it almost feels like here he's being a little more subdued with the anatomy and he's trying to be a little more elegant with it, and especially his tech is just insane. Definitely taking a lot from manga comics, but it's a good hybrid between American and, you know, American and Asian comics. This is an interesting sequence because, you know, as it goes underground and gets into the dark, we've basically just got here, it seems like, you know, just computer effects. no actual drawing. And even here we get a bit of the vehicle that we can see, but it doesn't feel drawn. It almost feels like a weird 3D modeling or collage or something. There's almost something akin to Kirby's collages in the late 60s and 70s that he did. Kind of odd for a comic like this. And yeah, story-wise, you know, we've just got Prophet, of course, meeting up with Kirby again, having to save him because he's not actually there. He's kind of a hologram, Star Wars style. And actually have a clear kind of mission set down by Chuck Dixon, as I said, the writer. So there's some growth happening here as far as Prophet and his mission. And we get a cool sequence here where we meet again. Is it Omen? I forget his name. Lord Omen. Yeah, there you go. He's kind of, you know, the guy who's going to bring about the apocalypse, right? He's the big baddie. And this guy comes out of the timeline. But you stabs this guy, cuts his head off, and, you know, you will die once and forever. So he's going after Omen, of course. And what we ascertain here is that this is some sort of future or multiverse version of him coming to kill him. That's what he says here. And then, you know, I said last issue of Prophet was probably one of the most extreme 90s comics. The most extreme 90s comic. I have to correct that. It was pretty extreme, but this one's definitely a contender as well, especially with this double page kind of bit of storytelling, double page splash panels. We got two with the vertical here. And I mean, he's just blowing bullets out of his gun here and cutting heads, and the heads and blood just flying all over the place. Tons and tons of carnage, and drawn in this manic Stephen Platt style. It's just insane. Like, again, very busy, and if you're not used to reading these comics, you got to slow down, take the time to decipher stuff and what's going on, just because it's so much detail. I mean, the colors does help a little bit, where the background character is kind of all blue and slightly kind of a monochrome feel, but not, you know, colors still too saturated to pull them really into the background, or enough into the background. Some of these just crazy like light effects here, so bright, creates such a bright effect. And yeah, so fighting through this whole crowd, cutting heads, shooting bullets, killing all these guys, and just as he gets real close, Omen pulls out a gun and kills himself, I guess, in a weird way. Yeah, just out of this world insane story and art, really. So here he is. Prophet has to be sent off to save Kirby, is basically what Kirby's telling him. And boom, sent to the future. Kirby? He's not here, John. He won't be here for another 70 million years, but we only have hours to save him from a horrible death. Dr. Wells? There's so much you don't know, John Prophet, and no time in which to tell you. So Dr. Wells is Prophet's creator, who was kind of established way back in Youngblood #2, I think. So we're finally getting to meet him. And that's what I mean about some of these story threads that kind of went nowhere a little bit all throughout Prophet are now being kind of reined in by Chuck Dixon to kind of clean that up. And I think he'll go a long way to kind of cementing the tropes of Prophet that we'll see later on in that series that I was telling you about, the Prophet series. That feels more, I don't know how else to describe it, as kind of a European version of Prophet that came, I'm sure, at least 10, 12 years later than after this. So there's a nice little section here, Prophet Sketchbook, where we get to see some basic layouts down here. We got another one here, rough pencils, I guess. So maybe that comes after this. Here we've got finished pencils, right? So you can see that hopefully on the camera is picking this up because it's very small and very detailed, that the inker is being pretty faithful to what Stephen Platt is throwing down there. This layout here I find interesting because basically he's putting down all the basic shapes and stuff with none of the hatching, none of the shading. And I feel like this level of drawing with just a little bit more detail would probably give or lend more clarity to the artwork all around, like as if all that hatching isn't necessarily necessary, but it's definitely one of the reasons that we like this kind of artwork and that we're into this kind of period of the 90s. So, you know, I don't know if maybe his more modern stuff reflects a bit more of that. Probably. I know he's become a little more realistic and he's toned down the anatomy and stuff, but there's still quite a bit of hatching from most of the stuff that I see going around on the internets. And this profile here tells me that this is coming out around the same time as Crypt #1, which I reviewed recently. So I would definitely say this book is a lot more fun and better, a better read than Crypt #1. Better art and definitely a better storyline, once again, from Chuck Dixon, a more experienced writer. So there you go, guys. That is it for today. That is my review of Prophet number 1, the second series, I guess. If you are subscribed and you're still watching, guys, thank you so much. I really do appreciate your support. If you're not subscribed but you're watching, please do so below. It only takes a quick second for you. Helps the channel grow and helps get us out there to other people who are into comic books just like we are. So thank you so much once again, and everybody out there, have an awesome day. King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13, 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at KINGCOMICS.CA, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby.
Like! Subscribe! Like! Subscribe!